Perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sunshines. It is Friday, and I will just tell you, I'm a bit of a hot mess today, but I'm so excited because I had this amazing connection with my guest today that we met through Lunch Club. So this is another person I've met networking. I absolutely love what she's about. I love her spunk and tenacity. Please give a very warm welcome to my friend, Coach Sandra Valks. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's exciting, because it really is neat when we get to meet people all over the world.
Yes.
Here we are 2 hours apart, time zone.
I know. It's always like, where am I? Who's on first base? What time are we at? But Sandra comes from us. She's another Canadian, which is awesome. I love, so funny. I met her on an American platform, but it's fun to meet another Canadian. And you have a really fascinating story. You've done a lot of things as an entrepreneur at a time when that probably wasn't as common for women. So tell me, did you imagine you would start a business? Like, I know you coach now, but that wasn't your first experience as a business owner. How on earth did this all come to play? Talk to me about the beginning of when Sandra said, I'm going to go blaze my own trail.
Do you remember, how far back do you want to go?
To the big moments.
Oh, no. Oh. My big moment was when I was about 7 years old and living out in the country in the farming community. And I don't know why I thought I wanted to go and earn a little bit of money. So they had Lick-O-Made at the time. So, it would be a little package, like a freshie thing with a little division on the side and a candy stick on the one side.
You still can have them now. I don't think they're called that anymore, but I know because funny enough, I actually had them at a farm party.
I saw them later too. But this was before I knew anything, and I'm out in the country. So, you get to walk those country miles. Mm. But off I went with my little Lick-O-Mades, and my neighbors would say, oh, isn't she cute? And they'd buy them. And then I went all the way up to costume jewelry. I think my necklaces were 25 cents.
See, this is fascinating to me because I so many people I just one day I decided to be an entrepreneur, and they don't realize actually the journey started a lot younger. And some people, have shared stories where it's like, I was a babysitter or I was a racket. Susan Jarima, who was on this episode a couple weeks ago now, maybe even a couple months, she's like, I had a racket. I would trade dimes for nickels. But my siblings didn't know that I was trading them down until my parents caught me and said, no. But same with you. You had this very young aspiration to be bold enough to say, one, it could have been about money, but also the courage to go up to other people and say, I have an ask.
I know. And as difficult as that is, it remained difficult for me to ask, which is really important because I think I had to learn to ask. Maybe I've had it up on my vision board for probably the last 15 years because I just kept adding on the vision. It's very full now, and I've started another one. But I had to learn how to ask. I was expecting people to be mind readers. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, if I do this, they'll do that. If I do this, they'll do that. There was always that, it's not polite.
This is so funny, right? Like, I will tell you, and I was just shooting a video this morning about, what breaks my heart. And it's watching the struggle of like, I just launched it. Why aren't they coming? And
I know.
And because we do think they're mind readers. And it's interesting that you say, you learned that you had to learn it was always uncomfortable. Because I know when you and I met through Lunch Club, one of the things was this new vision of your business, what it could come around. And it's like, but I have to ask. I still need to make a very clear statement. I'm in business and I can serve you with something that requires a transaction.
I know. So then I went from that to Regal greeting cards. That might be before everybody's time. I don't know. But they had beautiful boxed gift cards, not gift cards, greeting cards. So you could get the sympathy, you could get the birthday and feel well. And they were beautiful cards. And I think they still exist today. But I probably got in that when I was around 12, after the necklaces had gone the way of the necklace circus. And I remained with my Regal catalog for probably until I went to Europe as a military wife.
Wow.
Yeah, so it did well because it was an interesting little catalog. But then when I came back from the stint in Germany, and here was this little country girl Yes, I got married 20 and I had my first baby 24. And then we were going to Europe. And I didn't know about reservations. We got over there. We just thought, well, we should be able to go to the Tulip Festival. There's no room here at the inn.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, and restaurants, who would think? Because I hadn't gone there. So it's really very much of going from innocence and naivety every day, day by day by day. And it continues. I don't think it really ever ends, because if you're adventurous and if you're living full out, there's going to be so many things that we discover that we didn't even know was there. I mean, at the size of the cosmos, we're just this little blip of knowledge.
We're just a little freckle on it. It's fascinating because this is something that Nestine, who was my previous guest, said, and she was like, and I think we talked about it off camera, but this idea that, I have anxiety about stepping into the unknown. And she somehow was starting to create this level in her head. The levels are of your imagination, just by the way, because every time you do something for the first time, you are always doing something the first time. Like, it's always the first. Like, the first is always the first. And there's no other way to go around that. But you're right. You call it naivety or lack of experience. It's like, well, how can you know what you don't know?
That's right.
Like, why do you give yourself a hard time and forget grace about yourself, thinking like we didn't grow hatched. Like, everything was a discovery. And when we were little, we always, if you look at a young person, and I just happened to be playing with puppies this morning, and it's hysterical because they don't know their body size, and like they stop and everything falls over because momentum has already carried them, and their brain has changed direction. And it's a very good analogy for life. But we get harder about ourselves, forgetting that is always a thing. Always needing to learn, always needing to do first. And it never gets comfortable. We may get more comfortable with the discomfort.
Yes.
And say, well, I'm curious about what's on the other side.
That has become me. I am curiosity. I'm an adventurer. And I mean, when I went to Uganda, that just came out of meeting some young woman on Facebook. And then I wanted to send some books over. And I looked, it was going to be $1,600 for a 60-pound suitcase type of thing to go with their FedEx or whatever their stuff would be called. I think I can buy a ticket and go there for that. And that's how quickly that went. I mean, everybody here, the family, the friends, everybody said, Sandra, you can't go. Africa's dangerous, and you're going to be by yourself. Like, that's dangerous. And I said, well, they're going to pick me up. And as I'm landing in Uganda and thinking, now, if they're not for real and they don't really come and pick me up, this will really be an adventure.
I love the courage that you have. It's one of the things I admire so much about you. And I think it's an interesting one, because we could do more. I think we as business owners, we as human beings could do more of just put a little bit of faith in it and trust yourself to figure it out. Because, this is the world where we do make so many friendships virtually, and it's never been so easy technologically, but there is nothing like a face-to-face experience.
Right.
And to have the courage of, I met somebody, I'm going to get on a plane, I'm going to trust that it will all work out, or I will figure it out. And I know you talk so highly about all the international world and communities that you've created. Tell us a little bit about how you started to speak, or I think speak's the right way to phrase it, but you started to help other people who are non-English speakers practice their English. And it was a way for you to learn to build confidence around speaking. Tell us how that even started, because this is a fascinating story.
Oh my. Well, actually, for getting up in front of audiences when I was 5 years old, right back to my little community. Nothing happened in the community where the kids were not up on stage doing. So 5 years old, I was in festivals and competitions and up on stage, and nobody knew that wonderful little smiling child had a mask over her face because she was scared inside. But there's also the thrill of being on stage, and I'm a soloist. I've been in choir for probably 30, 40 years altogether, but that was always just so I remembered to blend with other people and keep my voice going. When I wanted to shine, I was out there being my soloist. the culture, I grew up in a country community where we had a lot of Dutch people at the time.
Mhm.
A lot of Europeans came over in 56, 57, 58 area, and we had Dutch. So they didn't have too much of accents, you know. They knew their English pretty good. And then I married a Dutchman, and then there's the Czechoslovakians. And pretty soon I was in my insurance business and was calling them up in Mikulicek, and they said, "Oh, it's so beautiful to hear my name said right."
Mm.
And having that, living in, married to a Dutchman, living in Europe for 3.5 years, I just love culture. So there's no question about that.
Mm.
And I would want to know what they were saying. What did you say? And my face is rather expressive, which I never used to realize. Now that I've been on Zoom for the last number of years, and like, oh yes, yes, everybody can see who Sandra is. And
I love the fact that there's no need for artifice.
No, and I don't have a mask anymore. And that, you know what I think happens? Everybody, myself was included, and now it's just at a higher level, because I know you and I still have, oh my God, we're going to do that. So it just
all the time, at least once a week,
just triggers
once a
it
day.
at a little higher level, you know, than when it was. But we live in a society where we think acting and stars and so on, the people that make it big, they're called overnight success, you know, like, oh, she sang a song, somebody heard it, and there she is, she's on stage. They forget that they were in the kitchen in the midnight slugging and washing dishes so they could have some food in their belly. We don't have overnight success.
No.
And that is really critical. If we could get over that thinking we're slow to the party.
Time is such a funny thing, right? It's either
Yes.
I'm too early, I'm too late. I'm never in judgment with you are exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, and I was always, I just can't catch up. I just can't catch up. I get there and they've gone ahead of me. I just can't, you know, like, you're just out of wind all the time. And that's a very stressful way to live.
Yes, it is.
Very stressful in the insurance business. 40 years there now. And my first 9 years, I made $1 Million Roundtable 5 for sure, maybe 6 times in those first 9 years. And I still never felt worthy. Like, only 3% of the insurance agents in the world make it there, but I couldn't own it. So I had to do all that deep work. And it came in, you know, one conference or one retreat, or just going through my pain and acknowledging it and claiming it and naming it. And I still do that today, but most part I am just laughing around because I've done so much of that work. And now I can look and say, oh my God, I remember when I was like that. Oh yes, you know, but they'll be okay. You want an idea? No? Okay, well, you'll find it out. Do you want an idea? Yes, please. Well, I can only share what I've had for my journey, but it might be good on you. And so it becomes a sharing and leaving people. I have a challenge to rush out and say, people, get in here, get in here, get in here, which is probably my biggest challenge now, is to ask and put out my offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating because, you know, when you go through unexpected things, so, you know, you've left the farm, you've gone overseas, you know, you've gone from this area where I've started to create a career, and actually by most traditional standards, you say 3% makes that level. You know, the outside levels of success, people would have said you're making it.
Mm-hmm.
You inside go, I just feel out of breath. I just feel like I'm always behind. And that is fascinating. And I think so many of us, when we hear this, will relate to it, because we are feeling that dissonance of pace. And, you know, one of the things that I know I hear from my mentors all the time is, Christine, slow down to speed up. And I'm like, Mach 10 hair on fire is generally my speed. And yet I do hear my inner dialogue changing.
Mm-hmm.
The inner dialogue changing.
I had an interesting conversation. I do enjoy going to shaman once in a while. And she was at my head and tapping. She says, oh, you really watch your thoughts now. She says, I can just feel it from my fingers. Oh, no, that's gone. No, that's gone. I have really learned to focus my thoughts and let all the stuff go. When I'm present, I don't have to remind myself anymore. Okay, I'm on here with Christine right now. I don't need to worry about, oh, I'm going to go get my hair cut. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Mm.
Don't need to worry about it. I'm just present. And the beauty of just being present is that I'm just me. Yeah. And the other thing, when you talked about grace, you know, when I was little, I was always afraid. I thought, if I ever go religious, I'll be fanatic, because anything I do, I have to do it all. And God's going to get you. Jesus loves you, but God's going to get you. And oh, man, oh, that is so stressful. But the one day, probably, let me see, probably 6-8 years ago now, I was walking along the waterfront, and things always perk in my brain. I guess that's how I stay meditative, I guess, because that wouldn't be present. I'm walking present by the water, but my thoughts are going. And all of a sudden, I understood I don't have to prove anything. Mm-hmm. I am complete as I am. I don't deserve it. I just have it. Oh my God, that's grace. Like, I didn't know what grace was. Grace is the air we breathe. Grace is the ground we walk on. We don't deserve it. I don't have to deserve it. I was born. I'm here. This is what it is. You know, this is it.
That's I think that's the rising consciousness, and I certainly know within my communities, and I attract that, and there's a lot of really fascinating conversations around, you know, let go of, you know, deserve or don't deserve it. It just is, and this is the truth. Like, when I'm thinking about, you know, the work I do, I always say to people, you know, somebody got out of bed today looking for what you have. The fact that you've been through some great chapters, some really ugly ones. They don't want to hear just the highlight reel. They actually are not looking for perfection.
Yes.
Perfection is the least interesting thing we see. And we don't want it.
We're afraid of change. We're afraid of
the judgment of ourselves against perfection. And usually the gap is big. And why would I lose faith I can cross the bridge. I can cross that gap. And so it's fascinating to talk about, you know, stop trying to justify your space. To just recognize, like, there's no mistakes.
No.
In the wider world, you can call it religion, you can call it university. So there's no mistakes. Everybody has a human journey. If we could focus on being human connections first, last, and everything, that's how you accelerate your enlightenment. It accelerates your fun, your joy, and say, just be. And I know my coach has been in my head a lot about just be. Christine, you got to be. Stop being in the head. Drop down. It's just be. Just, there's no judgment here. And I'm, of course, I'm fighting that. But it's been a very fascinating journey, because I do see moments of just embrace your humanness. And there you are, walking down a river or walking down some waterways and saying, this is grace.
It was life-changing for me. I mean, any of our aha moments, I mean, enlightenment. I remember the story of enlightenment. And so you have the master who is enlightened. And what does he do? He still builds that wall or rakes that grass. You know, what were we doing before we were enlightened? We were building the wall or raking the grass. What we're learning while we're becoming enlightened, we're building the wall. And, you know, it's our everyday washing the dishes, you know, and washing. Mindfulness has been another thing too. Pieces Every Step was another book, but mindfulness really just, when you're doing, I don't care what it is, what you're doing. If you're washing the dishes, appreciate them and say, oh, for me now, I went and I got a new set of dishes and then I gave them away because I loved my old ones so much. Because when I'm washing them, I know where they came from. I've got 2 plates that came out of the barn at my common law. And so I've got those 2 old plates. And then I've got a stack of other ones. I picked up a yard sale at another friend's yard sale, supporting the granddaughter with her EHS and EDD. I forget what she's got, Ehlers-Danlos, EDS. And so when I'm using those, first off, they're nice and flat. They fit a lot of things. And that's my memories.
That's your
so I couldn't get them. I didn't put them out of the cupboard. I just gave the other ones away.
Well, this is fascinating, because this is an interesting one, because, you know, I remember having that conversation with my mother, and every time I go visit my mother is of the generation where, you know, when they got married, they got china. And she keeps going, do you want this china? And I'm like, I don't want your china. It's not my generation's thing. We didn't do that when we got married. It wasn't our culture. It wasn't our habits. It wasn't our aspirations. Like, use your china every day. because to you they're tied to the beginning of a wonderful marriage. They've been married many, many years, not all of them fabulous, but they've got this true partnership, which is really beautiful. And I said, use your China every day. They're your storyline. And this is the interesting thing, I think, when you talk about, shifting that truth to applying it in a business setting, is people want to know your storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories we don't want to tell because they hurt, or they bring strong emotions on both ends of the spectrum. Those are the stories that actually connect you.
Absolutely.
And I was listening to a fascinating podcast about this yesterday, and the moment they started to tell the story, they're like, wow, I've got a lot of emotion still around that. And I can remember, when I first built this community, and we talked about, why did I feel it was so compelling to need to have it? I said, because people don't have cheering squads. And I knew that. I didn't seek one because I had this real strong sense of, I know where am I going, and I wasn't really ever looking, and I didn't have an inner circle that wanted it, so I didn't compare and think to go talk to them about it and feel judged. I just was like, okay, well, I'll just go do this then. But it really was about the storytelling. And the first course I ever wrote in my business, it was about losing a job, a major plot twist. Plot twist is a theme you hear a lot about in this community. And when you look at where your clients are at, like, they're in a moment of strong emotion. They need to connect to the story. They need to see the story reflected back at them and go, they might be the one person on the planet who hears me, understands me, sees me, and you need to be that person. So I'm curious, as you look at your business, because you've spent this year, you've been abroad, you've created a very successful career in the insurance world, and in recent years, you've decided to become Coach Sandra, and you've taken on a whole new journey. And I love this because people often says, I'm in my first season, and I know I met this amazing other gentleman. He's like, I'm in my third season. I said, you can have as many seasons and chapters in your career as you like. Okay. There's not, and I remember being 25 and phoning my dad. My dad's like, you've had more jobs than I've had my entire career. And it's weird, Christine, like, settle. Where are you going to settle? And I was like, settling is for boring people. I'm not a boring person. I didn't want that at all. But tell me a little bit about the gumption that takes and why you're so lit up, because you are. I see, your everyday chatter on your own page. They're so smart, intellectual, funny, honest. You do share your story very openly. Tell me what it's like when you suddenly go, it's time. I'm called to do something new.
I don't know if it's so much as something new, but it's about time. I guess it would be. I've done so many things, but they all get, I was explaining to somebody this morning that life is a tapestry. Mm-hmm. So yes, I grew up on the farm. I was a school teacher first, age 20. So I taught school for 4 years off to Europe, came back, no teaching jobs. There were more teachers than there were children. I waitressed for 6 years. Singing waitress for a couple of those, which was great fun.
I have somebody you should meet who does singing keynote speeches.
So, and then I went back to school because they said, oh, you're just a teacher. You can't make any business decisions. So I went back as an adult for a year while I was teaching, waitressing, I should say. And out of that, some lady, I had her come and speak, I guess, from the insurance agency. And so I thought, well, I could do that. And so I got into that. So that was kind of jumping in because that's all commission. Mm-hmm. It was all commission. And out of that, in that time, I've been 30 years in Toastmasters. I've been going to prison for 17 years. I started the new Toastmaster Club 17 years ago as well. I did a lot 17 years ago because I think that was when I was going through a lot of pain. I also became a workaholic to run away from an unhappy relationship. So then I went into a depression, went from London Life over to Money Concepts to say, I'm not staying there, and then to my own. But I had the depression, the change, the work, and the marriage breakup all happening at the same time. That's a big load. Then 6 years ago, it'll be about 5.5 years ago, my son passed away. And and I'm able to sit with people. In fact, I have a girlfriend who just called me last week, and she's been a client as well for probably 38 of those 40 years. And she said, Sandra, and I said, how are you doing? Well, not so good. It turns out I've got cancer and entirely through my body, and I've got about 2 weeks to live. I can do those conversations. I wasn't in tears. I said, oh my goodness, I wouldn't wish that. I'm so sorry for it. I'm so sorry about that. And I'm so happy that we're close enough that we can talk about it. And she says, so am I, Sandra. Mm-hmm. So when I go, we'll be talking about death and dying. Mm-hmm. So it's life experiences that we embrace. And every experience I have comes into my work with as Coach Sandra. And as compassionate queen of straight talk, people will recognize I'm not a good babysitter. It's not about being a babysitter. Let's get real. Let's get to what really matters, and let's get you unstuck. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful thing. So to create it, like I've been doing it for the last 5-6 years officially as a coach, but to really launch it now and declare it to the world, now that's a whole new leap again.
Those are my favorite kind of leaps.
I know, but they are leaps.
Yes, they are.
And I have to remind myself, I can look back and see I've been doing it all my life. I've been coaching all my life. Mm-hmm. Really, even from 5 years old, I was serving.
Yeah. Don't get caught in the label of this is a new thing. It isn't. No. It's a continuation of your storyline.
I mean, a farmer
once you know that, the fear is so much less.
A farmer is an entrepreneur, self-employed.
Sure are.
We just didn't have that word.
That's right. They're the hardest working people I know because my in-laws, I watch them.
Yeah. So it's just amazing. So I can't say that there was just that magic moment I made the leap. I think there was that magic moment when the aha came and I realized
doing it.
I am just being me. I have moved, because here we are in the present moment and here we are in the past. Well, in the past, that's gone, but that created who we are. How did we do that? Because we made choices and decisions that there we are. And how I've moved along to who I am now is in my imagination, seeing that I really am a good coach. And here is where I am. And pretty soon I grew into it. Yeah. And so now I know I'm launching, I'm going forward. So I'm there and I'm going to grow into it.
Well, and I think that's a beautiful message. And I want to linger here for a second because I think this is one of the hardest recognitions to sit within, and we want to spin out of it as fast as we can. And that is, and we talked about it in the start of the conversation, you don't have anything but firsts. Okay, everything is a first.
Absolutely.
And yet you have this expectation that I can't have them anymore, and I don't why you should have first all of your life. You're breathing, you're alive. That's the whole purpose of life, is to go have a first. And yet when you say everything that came before me shaped who I am, to be the person who's growing into the next person or the next, call it a chapter, call it this iteration. I said, business is about iteration. It's not about necessarily those big leaps. You look back and go, that was a big decision. I didn't know it at the time. Mm-hmm. Don't get caught in the brain ones, because honestly, that's when you're playing small. But you grow into who you're becoming. You don't get there without taking the firsts.
And that is I could do one imagine. That's through imagination.
Yeah. And your brain doesn't know the difference. And I always say to people, stop thinking you will get there any other way but growing into it.
But you have to know what you're growing into.
Yes.
So, God or the universe didn't give us a desire. And I'm really getting this. I've been studying first Proctor, but now I'm pretty heavy duty into Neville Goddard. And that's really amazing. So it's simply that this reality today, this moment, this moment, every breath is the only thing that's here. Mm-hmm. Anything that we're remembering, that's past. It's gone. It's not even real. Anything that we're looking at, that's future. The only reality was have this one breath right this moment. Mm-hmm. And from there, any meaning we give it is what we give it. So if we want to choose that, life really sucked. I had a hard time. I had a lot of, teasing. I had, emotional abuse. I had, start sticking labels on all of them. The bleep. By the time we put labels on, then we start to believe it. When we believe it, we create it. And that's the magic. So now, instead of believing all the terrible things, believe the good things and create them. Create them. I'm going back to Uganda in 2024 is what my hope is, as long as I don't have to be bumped off air flights anymore. I'm going to wait for that. But
you've got to believe it. And I think that's a beautiful way to think about it as you head into the weekend. This is true. You create your future and you grow into the person that can support it, lift it, and dream it. And I always say to people, when you get to that moment of hesitation, or you get to, I call them a plot twist, or your crossroads, the first thing you've got to choose, and you've just said it beautifully, don't choose the negative, choose what is possible, and then move in the direction of making it happen. I'm so glad that we have Lunch Club connected us. I just love your energy. I love the fact that, this is me, warts and all.
Warts and all.
and with an easy laugh that says, I am alive.
Yes.
Like that is, I think
I do my live every day. I've done my live every day since January 15 of 2021. So that's over a year and a half, Monday to Friday. And I have not once gone back and tried to edit anything. I don't have time. I kind of get inspired. Oh, there's what, I'll have a live afterwards about, I was on an interview with Christine and blah, 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 blah.
So guys, you guys are going to want to go check out, and we're going to post it into the chat after here once we wrap our live. You got to go follow this amazing woman that crossed my path, compassionate, straight talk, Sandra Valks. Thanks for coming to chat with us, guys. Have an amazing weekend. We look forward to seeing you back here for another episode, because every business owner has a story. What will yours say about you? Have an awesome weekend. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care.